Welcome to PodCACHE, the portable professional development podcast from CACHE Alumni. CACHE Alumni is the fastest growing association of professionals in care, health and education, and we're happy to have you here. This is where you'll hear from specialists and experts from across our network. Here's what's coming up.
We all sat in school and did subjects we didn't like. We struggled, we did it, but God, did it take work. But when you've done the ones you enjoyed, the ones you loved, it may have taken you extra work, but you didn't mind staying up the extra hours. You didn't mind reading the extra chapters or getting the extra book. You didn't mind doing any of it, so it made it easier.
Let's jump in to this week's episode.
My name's Jenny Phillips. I am a qualified early years worker with varying qualifications in early years. I'm also a qualified paediatric neonatal intensive care nurse. I was a lecturer in child health at a university, and I am also qualified in forest school education, and I'm working in a forest school preschool, and I'm moving in September to an SEN school to be a teacher with an SEN class, and I'm qualified in animal therapy, farm therapy and animal interventions, and I do many projects around animal interventions, some of which I've obviously published with CACHE.
Listening to, I know that you've done loads of things and you've got loads of qualifications, but listening to all of your qualifications in a row like that is pretty intense. How have you managed to do so much?
There's never been a year I've not studied since I've left secondary school. So I left secondary school, went to college and done my NNEB, as it was back then with CACHE. Studied for 2 years for that. And then when I went to work in nursery, it was full time. I then studied my advanced diploma in childcare and education, another CACHE qualification. And then after that, I done my level 3 professional CACHE. And then I've done my level 3 SEN, working with children, and I've just never stopped. There's never been a year I've not studied minimal one thing full time while working, obviously.
And you never seem to stop. You seem to have all of the things going on all of the time. From the outside, it seems like you're just really passionate about what you do and you want to fill your days with that.
I love working with children, love working with special needs. Children, young adults, I don't have an age range on that, and love animal therapy and farm therapy, and combining all of those things together to me is pure heaven. That's the job, the gold star, cherry on the top, the opportunity. And because I wanted it, I just worked and tried to find different ways of making sure that I could make it happen.
How do you feel that you're getting on towards that? I know that obviously you're moving in September to the SEN school and that you've been working with a lot of farm therapy stuff in the forest school that you're at now. Where are you on that journey of dream job?
Forest school, obviously when I was in nursing, I looked at animals in health and animals in nursing and done a lot of work around introducing animals into health and growing that education and awareness within those fields. I'd done many activities and events, as you know, at the university, got the animals in, took over the whole university with the animals. We were like a zoo at times. And that furthered the health aspect, which allowed me then to get into the education aspect, sort of like by a tentacle sideline, because I'm part of the university, and then they kind of absorbed me into them. And I've done lots of things with animals in education for them. Going to forest school let me actually then put that into practice. So we had animals at my forest school. We have 3 alpacas, a snake, 5 chickens. We have 7 cats on site. We also have a visiting dog that comes to stay for weeks on end. The animals have allowed me to do so much therapy and intervention, especially because I'm the Senko at the nursery. It's allowed me to combine and use sort of like therapeutic approaches with the animals. The cat has been totally amazing. George, the dog, has allowed me to work with children with dog fears, and 2 of the children that wouldn't go anywhere near a dog now stroke Charlie, give him a cuddle, talk to him. It's nice to see the change.
That's really lovely. It took me until I was a grown-up to be all right with dogs, really. I got chased around by a tiny dog when I was probably 9 or 10. And then I was very wary of dogs until I got into farming and became okay with other animals. And then it seemed really ridiculous to be okay with a bull, but not be okay with a dog. And sort of I suppose, understood animal behaviour a little bit better to be able to build that relationship with dogs again. So that's really interesting.
I don't think there's ever been an animal I'm naturally one who just go, oh, isn't it cute? I mean, yeah, I went on holiday, went to the deep south and cuddled an alligator, literally cuddled an alligator, and thought it was cute. So I'm sitting there going, oh, he's so cute. When I done my Duke of Edinburgh, you're gold, you have to do a service. So I went to Paradise Wildlife Park. I worked with tigers and lions and camels and all the other, including the horses and the rabbits as well. But found, made the most of my time there, got on. There wasn't an animal I wouldn't go in with or do anything with. Just say, yeah, come then, I'll do it. And that's what's allowed me to then, at the moment, I've just had a little boy with SEN. George the cat has his own reputation, bless him. His personality isn't known as the best. He's a unique cat. All our cats are rehomed. We don't know their backgrounds, to be honest. So they're all rehomed cats. But George is the school cat. With this little boy that I've been working with, that is not the same cat that everybody else sees. My little boy has Down syndrome, and they have such a unique bond. And George the cat can get that boy to do anything. Anything. He will not pick up a pencil voluntarily for any mark making. But when I put a picture of a cat to colour in, he looks at it, says George, and will pick up a pencil and just try any sort of mark making. And then he wants to go and give it and show it to George. He uses, obviously, like we all know, most children with Down syndrome pull hair. They're quite heavy-handed. With George, we've always spoken about gentle hands before we touch. And he even now says gentle hands, and he strokes. And George just lays there. Even when a misguided finger goes up a nostril in an ear, he doesn't do anything. He just lays there, looks at him. They have conversations. My little boy makes noises. George meows. He makes noises. George meows. It's like a proper to and forth. And my little boy never has conversations. So George has allowed him that learning experience of how it's a to and fro conversation.
That's great. And I don't think I'm crediting George with that. But I would imagine that there's quite a lot in that relationship from you in the way that you have approached the building of that. Because obviously putting a stray or a temperamental cat into a room full of children who might not know the best ways to work with that animal probably isn't a recipe for the best day out anybody's ever had. So tell us a little bit more about farm and animal therapy in general and how that works.
Okay, so first of all, know your animals, know your people. Yes, I knew George's history, but I also knew, because I'd spent time with him before I let any child near him, what his capabilities were. And what I found was he didn't like to be approached from the front of his nose, like a full-on hand facial. And it's like, well, a child wouldn't want your hand in their face. That's common politeness. So I'd figured out that you come from the back of him, like you stroke down the back of his neck and you go down his body. And as soon as I found that out, all my children in forest school, we sat behind him, and when I said to them, look at how his body is talking to you. George can't tell you, leave me alone now, I've had enough. So look at how his body changes, and that's telling you what you need to know. And so we learned how to read body language. Well, with my mainstream children, that was very easy. They understood that, and it was a learning curve, because obviously that translates to humans as well. We start to pick up people's body postures and body movements. With my little boy, it had to be slightly different. He didn't have that cognitive functioning of understanding. So I'd sit with him, we'd do the same, but I would purposely sit him to the side of the cat, not in front of him, so his hand wouldn't come from the front, it would come from the side. And what I found was that I'd guide his hand first and do hand over hand, sharing the journey, and then as he got used to it and repeated it, he done it himself. So then I could leave them. And then they got to the point where he could sit in front of him, but he knew he still had to put his hand around the back of the cat, but he could sit looking him directly. We kind of built to it. And farm therapy, any animal therapy, is exactly the same. Obviously, no, anyone's got an allergy is a good start, because don't put any allergic people with animals they're allergic to. If they've got a fear, don't give them a spider and watch them run and scream. That's traumatic. But it's a matter of building up to it and working. My two little boys with a dog, we stood back. We just looked at him from afar. What does he look like? What colour? What shape? What size? Why don't you like dogs? And general conversation, but nowhere too close. And then building a little bit closer. And then me standing in front and then standing in the middle. Not close enough to a head, but close enough to a tail. because I'm lucky, Charlie, when you give him a rub, the towel keeps going, and the more you rub, the more the towel goes. So it's like a good game because the children want the towel to keep wagging. And that's where we started. And then once they got used to that and enjoyed, we come further up the head and looked, and we spoke about how animals can't talk, and it's the way you engage with them and look at their bodies. And they built, and now they'll stand next to his head, stroke the top of his head, between his ears. And it's the same when the alpacas. Don't walk behind an alpaca unless you want to get kicked. Stay towards the front. Don't poke your finger where you wouldn't like your finger. Would you like somebody's finger up your nose, in your ear? Sharing, and then letting them have the opportunity to, I don't know, stroke, brush. The alpacas, I harness and they walk, so they can go for a little. It looks a bit bizarre with a really tall alpaca and a really short 3-year-old, but it works. And and obviously we've got a double handled lead. So I've got one, they've got one, so it's all good and safe. But they think they're doing all the work, and I'm just there for a pretty sight. And we go off walking. They feed them. They know flat hands. Unless you want to give them your finger for treats, give them a flat hand. And that's what they do. And that's how we build, and that's how we've done all our animals. The snake is exactly the same. They know how to handle the snake, how to touch.
Thinking about how that works in practice, and having read the article that you wrote for Illuminate, the CACHE Alumni member magazine, like obviously we know a little bit about the benefits and the theory behind that animal therapy as well. What is it about animal and farm therapy that fascinates you so much that you've made it such a big part of your life and your career?
I think I've always loved animals. Mum's always said I've had a thing for it. I've always gone to animals, even like as a little child, with the creepy crawlies and the worms and the slugs in your hand. I've always had animals, and if it's furry, feathered, scaled, I want to be with it, touch it. And I think I've always known that there's a connection there. I mean, a lot of people would say biofilial hypothesis because they believe that we are nature ourselves, going back to evolution theory. So we are nature, we need to be connected to it, and we are naturally drawn to it. I think I'm the poster girl for that, if you're looking in it that way. But then as I've grown, as I've learnt more and wanted to do more, I've started to see it. And then obviously I'm one of these, it's like, no, don't tell me, show me, do it, try it. And I've done it, I can see it, I've shared it with others, seen the results, seen what's capable, what's possible, and it's like, yeah, and it's just built and developed more and more and more. The more I learn, the more I see, the more I want to try it, the more I want to do it, leads me on to something else, develop something a bit further. So when I went and worked in Bosnia, I went to a equine therapy centre and spent time there, and they let me do equine therapy sessions and have a hand in on that, not just stand and watch and stroke horses. And of course that really built and gave me the concrete evidence of what I was doing, and totally loved it. And I had the micropig experience, and I was afforded that opportunity, and I was like, yeah, I'll do it, come on, where's the pig? Saw what the pigs did for people. And obviously I've got friends that have animal rooms, and I've worked with people with animal rooms in their schools. The more you do, the more you see, and the more you want. It's just a love, it's a passion.
So you referenced the micropig experience there, and I'm not sure if anyone in the audience will know what you're referring to. So can you tell me a little bit more about the micropig experience?
So micropigs, the more common street name is probably a teacup pig, if people are looking at a more classic name. And yes, those are the ones that you do hear in the newspapers. They bought a teacup pig and it turned into this huge, great big pig, and they then had to give it away because it wasn't what they expected. But it's because they've not bought from the right people, basically. They've not actually done their homework as they should have, and just gone with a really good, colourful ad and been happy. But genetically, there will always be one pig that will prove the point and grow big. But a micro pig is a very small pig. Some people have them live in their houses like dogs. They are the 4th most intelligent animal on the planet, so they're trainable. So they have been trained to go into litter trays or certain areas, or like dogs, I'm letting you out at this time, go do what you need to do and then come back. And because they are so small, you can get that contact, that bond with the pig. And of course, you don't have the allergies like you do for dogs because it's a pig, not a dog. They're more hypoallergenic. They don't cost as much as a dog to feed. They eat pig nuts and some leftover vegetables that you're probably not going to use, and etc., etc. So they afford many opportunities that some people may not get an exposure to certain animals with, but they're a completely different animal as well. And they have their own personalities, their own. and they do have personalities. When I went to see them, you could see all these different, like in a nursery class, you could see the clown and the troublemaker and the quiet one. And it's just like being in a classroom when you're surrounded by micropigs, but it's great fun. And in America, a lot of micropigs are used in hospitals as therapy.
That's interesting. I'd love to see more, like, in hospitals, like tiny pigs and cool things that happen over here. That would be amazing.
Well, in this country, we use dogs. As you know, the most classic is a dog. They've just started a couple branching into cats. A couple of farms have started doing, like the touring farms. A lot of schools buy in a farm to come in for a few hours. They bring a few animals. Well, a similar principle, but for hospitals, and they take farms. But in America, more standardised, like our dogs in hospitals, their standard animals are far more diverse than ours. They'll have cats, dogs, rabbits, guinea pigs, micro pigs, micro horses, llamas and alpacas, rats and birds, and they all go into hospitals. They've all passed their, their certificates and been approved and got all their paperwork. But it's not unusual to go to an American hospital and walk past an alpaca going in the lift to a patient on the 3rd floor, like it is in our hospital to stand next to a dog going to the 3rd floor to visit a patient.
That would be a bit of a dream come true, I think, to go into a hospital and to share a lift with something cool like a pig or an alpaca. I was amazed at how human animals are. We have chickens that live in the garden, and they all have such distinct personalities and ways of approaching situations and relationships that it would be very difficult not to see them as tiny people.
Maybe the flip side of that is, like we were talking about labelling. Well, if you can't label an animal that's human, maybe we follow the animals. Flip it, just look at it from a different way. All the animals, we've all grown and developed. I mean, the chicken is the closest living relative to the dinosaur. So we've all been around, they've been around longer than we have. And chickens, as you know, if you put one on your lap and stroke them, they'll purr. If they're happy, they purr. But that is a good thing for you. And if you've got a cat and can put it on your lap and stroke it and it purrs, it resets your homeostatic wave. They're at the same Hertz wave. So you'll give yourself a boost and a well-being and a health boost to your body by stroking a cat and making it purr on your lap. And also you get the good time of chill out.
Yeah, there's nothing better than cuddling a chicken, I don't think, for like just feeling good. Like, it's just that they're such lovely animals to spend time with, to socialise with. Like my
but then there's so many animals. The amount of time I've spent cuddling an alpaca, and I would say the same. Not that I can sit him on my lap, he's too big. All three of them are. That sort of hug and cuddle, and especially on a cold winter's day, they're nice and warm as well. And there's a connection to be had for different times and spaces and needs, and to what you want. I mean, people say you can't cuddle a snake. Yeah, you can. You can curl up with the snake and have that. And there are people that have sensory processing, or a lot of children and adults with autism relate to snakes easier. They can have that connection that they sometimes find hard with other animals. So I think it's individual needs. To your book you'd love, Dawn, you need to read The Gentle Barn.
I'll add that to my list.
It's the most amazing book. It tells you about, she started her own organisation in America, and how she started cuddling a cow, and how all these animals and what they do and how they work for people. The very first part tells you about some traumatic part in her life and what set her on this course, but it doesn't go into it so much that you're like wanting to cry and hide in a cupboard or anything. It just sort of sets enough of the background so you understand where she is and why she's where she is. You could skip it and not lose anything, but the whole Gentle Barn journey. And if you remember in my farm therapy one, I wrote about cow cuddling. There's where it came from. It started with Buttercup, her cow, when she first started the Gentle Barn.
It's amazing. I think that's the dream for all of her, isn't it? To have a farm of our own that we can use for amazing.
It would not surprise anybody in my house if I come home and they come home one day and there's an alpaca walking past and a pig walking down. They'll be like, what the heck? But they won't be surprised.
This is Podcash, brought to you by CACHE Alumni. For discounts on everything from Apple products to MOTs, visit the cashback page of cachealumni.org.uk. That's cachealumni.org.uk.
So you talked a little bit about, I suppose the best phrase to use would be horses for courses, thinking about different situations for different animals and different things that people might need. How do you know what animal is the right animal to support a particular child or young person or adult that you're supporting?
You never put an animal straight with, you might be surrounded by them, but you don't put one on a lap or something straight away. You talk first and get to see them first of all. Use your eyes, your ears and your brain cells first to kind of see a personality. Things like coordination, how well they move, how well they don't move, because obviously certain animals will move a lot quicker than others. Snakes are slower going. Reptiles are. So if you've got somebody that's not as quick and mobile and more jerky, a slower animal is going to be better for them. If you've got somebody tottering all over the place, you're not going to give them a little chihuahua to fall over because it's gone around their legs and they've fallen flat. You're going to want something like a nice big alpaca that's easy to see and easy to manipulate and get round. So some of it is observation and practicality. Allergies again, obviously. Fear. If they say to you, I'm an arachnophobic, you're not getting a tarantula out anytime soon. And sometimes if you ask, well, what are your favourite animals? Or if it's an older person, you know, like what animals did you have when you were younger? What animals did you enjoy being around? They'll give you the answer. You may not have the exact species, but you might have a similar, I have rabbits. Oh, I don't have a rabbit, I have a guinea pig. You know, you can sort of work out from what they say and what they tell you. Or if you're in a room with animals, they'll look at all of them, but generally given 5 minutes or so, they will keep going back to one. They will keep looking or moving back to something that's really caught their interest, and introduce them. If it doesn't work, there's plenty of others. It's not a lost thing. It's still a learning experience. It's still an experience to be had and to be benefited from. And also they've got to meet an animal. But then maybe the next one is the one they're like, yeah, this is my favourite. This is my version of I love to cuddle a chicken. This is my version of I love an alpaca or whatever. Or there are some people that actually just benefit from a bit of everything. There is no one set standard, especially some people, you know, the kind of people that their moods change daily. Well, then the animal changes with the mood, because depending on that mood, that certain animals may not be appropriate for that day. So, and some people just like to be more flexible and diverse and share the love a bit more across fur, scales and feathers and try a bit of everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just knowing what you want to get out of this more, planning for it, or being flexible enough to go, okay, well, we can still do that, just do it a different way. Have the bird today, have the cat today, go with the flow. There's no invalid process.
So listening to this, it feels a little bit like this is almost second nature to you, that this is just like, well, this is how I would approach it. And it all just seems dead easy. But obviously, there is that saying, never work with children or animals. You've decided to do both of those things together.
Yeah, the famous quote, never work with animals, never work with children.
Yeah, so like whilst it seems like for you, it's quite easy and comes naturally to not only work with both of those groups, but to work with maybe some of the more difficult to navigate things in those people's lives, whether that's the animals who have been rescue animals or children who have additional needs or like special educational needs, and to bring all of that stuff together. I can imagine that there are practitioners who are listening who are like, that's a lot. Again, you haven't stopped studying since you started school, not just since you left school, because obviously at school you were learning. What is it that you've studied? What is it that you've done that's led you particularly to this point with animals?
I think when I studied my first masters, and you know what I'm like with this, so we won't go there, my first masters, when I was told I could pick any subject I wanted, any topic I wanted, as long as it was within because I'd done it in education and special educational needs. As long as it hit the special educational needs criteria and the stuff of that, my tutor said, do what I like. And well, did he open a can of worms on that day? I mean, he was with me for the whole journey, bless him, and he never regretted it, and he said he loved it as much as I did, but I was the only one that went so far out of the box. But he let me have free rein, and I'd done many stuff up until that point. Both of my bachelors had stuff and dibbled in it, but I couldn't write on it because it wasn't the requirement for any of those essays, and it didn't give me the free rein to just go full 100% out on it, whereas this did. And that's where my whole thing started, a master's in inclusive education looking at animals in special needs schools. And so it just went 110% full out, full wham. And I had access through because I was at the university, I was link lecturer to special needs schools, and they were like, yeah, bring animals. come, bring animals, Jenny. We've got children, bring animals. And so that's where we started. And that's, while it started before that in small ways, that was the big catalyst that kind of said, you're allowed to do it, do what you want. And since then, I've never let anything stop me. The animals have always been what I've done. Even now, in the masters I'm doing now, while it is in leadership and management, it's in animals being incorporated into education, and the doctoral stuff was in animals in health.
That's amazing. And you are pretty incredible. It feels very much like you are immersed in both of those things, and you like to both do things and be very hands-on and practical and learn things through doing, as much as being fairly academic. Do you have any tips for people who maybe are a little bit fearful of academic study, but actually are very passionate about things?
To be honest, I was always the kinesthetic, let's face it. I'm the hands-on, still am. Why do you think I work with 3 and 4-year-olds? Come on, like the hands-on all the way. But it's like, to do things and to study, you have to go on. I was never the pegged academic when I was at secondary school. It was just like, yeah, okay, you did what you needed to do, you did your best, and you carried on. I knew what I wanted, work with children, so I went to college in an NEB, so I knew what I had to do, and you concentrate on it. And the thing is, though, it's like, nobody's going to stop me, say what you like. You can tell me I'm not going to be able to do it. Bless her, Mum got told I would never go beyond college. I'd go to college, do my NEB, I'd be totally great. Childcare was my area, but pretty much don't expect me to go any further than that. Bless her, she's got 6 graduation pictures on her wall at the moment from universities. So never let anybody tell you can't. Never let anybody say you can't. It may take a lot more work. It may take more effort. You may do it a bit slower, but you do what you want to get where you need to be. And if it's where you want to be, you'll do it, because you'll find the way. Like anything, you'll always find the way to get there. And if one way's blocked, doesn't mean you can't get there via a different route. You just have to look and do a bit of research and go, okay, I can't do that one because I don't have all the A's and the B's. But if I do that and go this side or do this or work in that environment, that would then lead me into another pathway. Just keep going. Don't stop. Don't let anybody say no. Find your own ways of working. Find your own ways of doing things. I learned, my brain, Dawn. My brain goes. I'm very much spidergrams, diagrams, pictures when I plot and see things. I mean, my lecturers used to look and go, oh God, look what she's done. But that's how I plot it out to be able to do it. That's how I see it. And nobody's ever stopped me. They may look at it and cringe when I do it. And especially if they're people that don't understand how different people work, and maybe you don't work in their normal, very linear lines, that's fine. Just say to them, that's fine, you work your way, I'll work my way, just help me and we'll get there in the end. And I have, and I've just never let anybody say no or stop.
So it sounds like the secret to achieving all of those things, like those multiple degrees, multiple masters, heading towards sort of PhDs and doctoral things, is, it sounds really cliched, but is to find something that you're passionate about and use it as a vehicle to achieve amazing things.
Yeah, I'm not into languages. I speak English and bad English. I do not speak multiple languages like some people pick it up like sponges. So I sat in French and it was a disaster. But I did the best, but I knew that wasn't. But my childcare when I was at school was obvious. That was my area. We all sat in school and did subjects we didn't like. We struggled, we did it, but God, did it take work. But when you've done the ones you enjoyed, the ones you loved, it may have taken you extra work, but you didn't mind staying up the extra hours. You didn't mind reading the extra chapters or getting the extra book. You didn't mind doing any of it. So it made it easier. And then you got the grades that you wanted, or you achieved what you wanted to do. So if you love it, I've sat up reading, don't even ask what time I've read these animal books to, and the theories and stuff. I'm still up at 2 a.m. with the light on, and I just don't see it as a problem. I'm enjoying what I'm reading, like people read, their Agatha Christie's and stuff. But if you love it enough, it will carry you where you want to be. If it's a subject you hate, but you have to do it, you'll do what you need to do to just get it done, but you're not putting in any extra.
So how did you find what it like that link between the things you're passionate about, because not everybody would look at early years education and childcare and look at working with animals and go, oh, those two things fit together. I can build a world around those two things. They would either go, well, I'm going to work in childcare, or I'm going to work in a nursery and an early years education, and I'm going to follow that path because that's set out right in front of us, and I can follow that path, and I can be a nursery nurse, and then I can become a room leader, and I can become a nursery manager, and I can go down that path because that's what that career looks like. Or they would say, well, I'm going to leave school and I'm going to work as a receptionist in a vet, and then I'm going to get into animal care, and I'm going to follow that path, and you seem to have built your own path and sort of made it up as you've gone along. How does that work?
I don't see that there's any defined boundaries in anything. There's always an expected and obvious route. Don't get me wrong. There's always that one. You become the nursery nurse, you become the room leader, you may become Senkos or leads of certain subjects like safeguarding or what have you, and then you may become like a deputy manager and a manager and go up the ladder, because that's a standard business sort of methodological plan. But I've never been the one, and I always said to my students, that doesn't mean to say that's the only version that's out there. And there are people that suits, and please don't get me wrong, but for the people that suits, please do it. If that suits you and that's your aim of the game, you want to be the director of the nursery, then obviously that's your route. That's what you need to do. But I don't see that there is any in particular barrier to anything. You can mix and match many things, and just because it's never been done before doesn't mean to say it's not the right, it's not the improved, it's not the better, because there's nothing to disprove it because it's never been tried. So you want it, you enjoy it, mix it together. Like how did we put Reggio Emilio into our classes? How did we put high scope unless we go and learn, saw and try? How did new loose part theory come to play unless somebody put loose parts in and let children have a go to see what happened? Whatever your passion is. I've done, a lot of eco stuff because I went to a forest school and became a forest school room lead and thought, well, I'm in forest school. Surely eco, environmental, is part of forest school education. It should be in it. I just made the decision as the room leader. This is the plan we're going to have. We follow the EYFS curriculum. I devised my own curriculum in eco and ran it alongside it. Combine the two because EYFS is flexible enough that you can combine the two in the different areas. So same with animals. There is no boundaries unless you put them there or you can't come up with the argument to overcome them. And I've got good at arguing and overcoming things. And it's just like, I'll prove my point. Give me a day. May not come straight so quick, but give me a day or two and I'll overcome that because I'll find the way to counter your argument. Or generally, they've just never even thought of it half the time and go, look what I've thought of. Look at what I've decided I want to do. And I did and got a snake in my classroom.
So it sounds like it's a combination of being able to ask what if and to imagine new things and things coming together, but then being able to articulate the reasons why your idea is a good idea and not being put off by other people's inability to see that what if straight away.
Yeah, I mean, there are no boundaries. So don't put one there where one doesn't exist, otherwise you're making your own problem. Just see your vision, see what you want, and then go, okay, now how do I make this practical? Yeah, we're not all getting in a rocket and going to Mars anytime soon, so that's not the next nursery day trip out, but maybe I can take them to the museum and we can do, or something, think creatively. But then be ready when some people are not creative, are not ready to just think out their box, because they're comfortable in their box, and it's like, don't rock this boat, don't do anything. So be ready to sort of say, but this is the benefit. Be ready, because you know what they're going to say. What are the policies and protocols, the health and safety, the cost is always going to be one, and all of that. And you can be ready with all of that and say, yes, well, I did cost it. I've done a really good deer version, a mid-range version, and let's face it, the shoestring budget version. I've got the policies and protocols, and I found that this is, allowed. And I've got the research evidence to support my idea on what I'm doing. Here it all is, and I've written it out for you. Or I've given it to you in this folder, or I can tell you if you would like me to. And then let them, because then if you're putting it forward to them, and if you don't like the answer, say from your next person up, go to the one above. There's always somebody higher.
That's great. And I think that idea of like having the confidence in your own ideas and the things that you want to bring is really important, especially in early years and care, where I think maybe there's lots of people who have loads of insight about what would make a setting better or what would make the lives of the people that they work with every day better because they know them very well. But maybe they don't have the confidence to suggest new things or to pursue them once they're told no. So hearing about all of the things that you've managed to achieve by not taking no for an answer is maybe something that people can take that away from and maybe try again with their what if.
Yeah, just be ready. I mean, the easiest way to do it, my mum is very good at this. I say to her this, this and this, and she will always play what's known as devil's advocate. And so she'll be my opposite. I'll say yes and she'll say no, just purposely. She may agree with me 100%, but she'll be the no person to make me argue it, because you will come across that person that is the no person. So what's your argument for it? And then she'll say, but what and how and when and where and why? Like that person is going to be. So what you want to do is, if you're not as confident in yourself and or your thing you're putting forward, find somebody you are comfortable with, a friend, a family member, a colleague, and say, basically like as a role play, but not just over a cup of coffee, go, right, come then, argue it out with me. Let's do, if you go to university, let's do the Viva or the OSCE. Be ready to argue this case and say, okay, no, because of the cost. Well, now you see, I've argued that one because there's a dear and a cheap and a whatever. But what about this health and safety? Yes, well, you see, we can do this. And you'll build your confidence. So when you go into that person and they start their no's and ifs and buts and whats and wheres, you've already got the answers because your mum or somebody's already asked you that.
That's great. And I think that idea that no is a starting point and not necessarily the end point in it.
No is never an end. To me, no is just like, okay. How many children, when you say something, the first word they ever learn, no. No. Do you want this? No. And it's like, as nursery workers, we've all learned how to deal with that no, because they've got to do it even if they don't want to do it. But how do you make them do it so they make the choice of doing it, that you've not forced it? It's no different. You just take your early years skills and adapt it to a different way of thinking, and no is where you start. It's not a negative, it's a positive, because if you overcome the no.
So no is a conversation.
Yeah, no is not a dead-end subject. No is like, students used to say no to me and I say, now argue your case, please. Why? No is not an answer. No is a statement. It's not an answer to anything. Please finish the sentence. And I'm bad enough that I'll go to my bosses and they'll say no, and I'll be like, could you explain that, please? And then let them start the conversation, because they then have to explain why they're saying no.
So actually forcing someone to think about the reasons for no is sometimes quite important to move things forward. I
would say, don't let anybody say no. Don't let anybody tell you no. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. Yes, you can. You may just have to find your own way of doing it, but yeah, you can. Learn to look out. I don't believe in boxes, and my brain never works in a box. It works in another galaxy. So don't be bounded in boxes. Don't be bounded by labels. People that know me well enough, including you, Dawn, would know if I could get an elephant, a tiger, a crocodile, all those animals, everybody would say, no, never, never, never. They would all be in my classroom, and there's a place for them all. So that's what I believe, and I will keep working till I hopefully get my own farm in a classroom or my own zoo in a classroom. And there are schools out there with animal rooms, and there's a secondary school with its own zoo attached, and it is registered as a zoo under the zoo licensing of England. So there is no impossibilities. You want it? Go get it.
Thanks for listening to Podcash. If you enjoyed it, please follow or subscribe on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. You can also watch many of these conversations by heading over to cachealumni.org.uk and going to the CPD and best practice section of the site. That's cachealumni.org.uk.